The fortress of finance stood as both monument and maze, its steel and glass walls refracting the ambitions and anxieties of those within. Beneath its vaulted ceilings, the air hummed with the sterile cadence of commerce, pens scratching against forms, the muted chime of digital approvals, and the occasional cough swallowed by the vastness. Here, the weight of human worth often seemed measured in decimals and signatures. Claire entered, her presence a quiet defiance against the building's indifference. Her Down syndrome was not her identity but a facet of her being, though the bank staff, cloaked in their veneer of professionalism, betrayed subtle discomfort. Their smiles were thin, their eyes darting past her as though her existence complicated the clean lines of their day. In the midst of this unspoken tension, the doors opened again, and Keanu Reeves stepped inside. He moved without pretense, his presence as unassuming as it was magnetic. He did not command attention but invited it, his gaze sweeping the room with an unspoken acknowledgement of every soul present. When his eyes found Claire, they lingered, not in pity, but in recognition. He approached her with the kind of ease that disarmed the room's rigidity. "May I help you?" The question was simple, yet it carried a weight that shifted the atmosphere. The staff, once rigid in their roles, now seemed to falter, their postures softening as if reminded of something long forgotten. In that moment, the bank became more than a place of transactions. It became a stage for humanity's quiet triumphs, where dignity was restored not through grand gestures but through the simple act of seeing and being seen. The world unfolds within a towering financial citadel, its steel and glass walls exuding an air of impersonal efficiency. Inside, the banking hall pulses with the rhythm of commerce, papers shuffling, pens scratching, and the muted clink of coins, a mechanical symphony devoid of warmth. The sterile lighting casts sharp reflections on polished surfaces, amplifying the cold detachment of the space. It is a realm where human connection often bows to the altar of profit, and compassion is a currency rarely exchanged. Claire, a young woman with Down syndrome, steps into this unyielding environment. Her life has been a tapestry of quiet resilience, woven with threads of her mother's unwavering encouragement and her own determination to confront a world that often underestimates her. Today, she carries a small purse containing her modest savings, intent on opening her first bank account, a step toward independence. Her bright smile, a beacon of hope, is met with indifferent glances and subtle dismissals, the weight of societal bias pressing against her resolve. Keanu Reeves, a man whose fame has not eroded his humility, enters the scene. Known for his unassuming kindness, he carries an aura of quiet strength, his presence a stark contrast to the transactional coldness around him. His eyes, warm and perceptive, immediately notice Claire's struggle. Drawn by an innate sense of justice, he approaches her, his actions guided not by obligation but by genuine empathy. Standing beside her, he transforms the atmosphere, his simple yet profound gesture challenging the unspoken hierarchies that govern the space. The staff, initially indifferent, begin to shift under the weight of Keanu's silent advocacy. Their rigid professionalism softens, replaced by a growing awareness of their own biases. Claire, emboldened by his support, finds her voice, her confidence blooming in the fertile ground of unexpected solidarity. The interaction becomes a quiet revolution, a momentary redefinition of value that transcends monetary exchange. In this transformed space, humanity reclaims its rightful place, proving that even in the most unlikely settings, compassion can flourish. In the steel and glass labyrinth where humanity often yielded to sterile precision, Claire's quiet strength met unkind gazes, her presence a soft defiance against indifference. As the hum of transactions persisted, Keanu Reeves appeared, his unassuming warmth dissolving the bank's frigid atmosphere. Standing beside Claire, he transformed judgment into empathy, igniting a silent revolution of shared dignity. Claire's goal was simple yet profound: to secure a small loan that would breathe life into her dream of opening a community art studio. However, her first obstacle stood tall in the form of the bank's rigid bureaucracy, compounded by the dismissive attitudes of its staff. Each rejection chipped at her resolve, yet she clung to her vision with quiet determination, her unwavering belief in the transformative power of art unshaken. Keanu, by contrast, had no overt mission upon entering the bank. Yet his innate ability to sense injustice quickly aligned him with Claire's plight. Their connection, born of mutual respect and shared humanity, began to deepen as he offered not just moral support but also actionable advice. Together, they navigated the labyrinth of paperwork and skepticism, their partnership a testament to the power of empathy. As the hours passed, the sterile environment of the bank began to shift. Claire's courage and Keanu's quiet advocacy inspired subtle changes in the staff, some of whom started questioning their own biases. A young teller, moved by their persistence, discreetly offered guidance on how to strengthen Claire's application. This marked the beginning of a subplot, the teller's own journey toward rediscovering the human element in her work. The dynamic between Claire and Keanu grew richer with each shared challenge. While Claire's optimism softened Keanu's occasional cynicism, his strategic thinking bolstered her resolve. Their collaboration illuminated a broader truth, that even in spaces governed by cold efficiency, the warmth of human connection could forge pathways to unexpected possibilities. The bank's rhythm shattered when a loud, jarring crash echoed through the hall. A masked figure stormed in, brandishing a weapon, their voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Everyone down! This is not a request." Panic rippled through the room as customers and staff froze, their routines obliterated by the sudden chaos. Claire instinctively clutched her purse tighter, her breath shallow, her resolve tested. Keanu, still beside her, remained unnervingly calm. His eyes scanned the room, assessing the situation with a quiet intensity. The intruder barked orders, demanding access to the vault, while fear thickened the air. Claire's trembling hand brushed against Keanu's, and he gave her a reassuring nod, as if to say, "Stay steady." The tension escalated when a young teller, visibly shaken, fumbled with the keys to the vault. The intruder grew agitated, their movements erratic, their threats sharper. Claire's heart raced, but something in Keanu's presence anchored her. He stepped forward, his voice firm yet soothing. "Let's not make this worse. We can find a way out of this." The masked figure hesitated, their grip faltering for a brief moment. As the room held its collective breath, Claire realized this was no longer just about survival. It was a test of courage, humanity, and the power of connection in the face of fear. The sterile order of the bank had been upended, replaced by a fragile, urgent need for unity. The air shifted subtly as a young boy, no older than 10, tugged at his mother's sleeve near the entrance. His oversized backpack, adorned with fraying patches, suggested a life of modest means. The mother, weary yet resolute, clutched a crumpled check, her eyes scanning the room for guidance. Claire noticed them first, her heart instinctively reaching out, but it was Keanu who acted. He crouched to meet the boy's curious gaze, exchanging a smile that carried no pretense, only warmth. Behind the counter, a junior teller named Marcus hesitated. His usual detachment faltered as he observed the quiet exchange. Marcus, a man often dismissed by his peers for his lack of ambition, felt a pang of something unfamiliar, an urge to step beyond protocol. He glanced at his supervisor, who remained oblivious, engrossed in a spreadsheet. Marcus's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his mind wrestling with a decision that could upend his routine. Meanwhile, a woman in a tailored suit, seated in a corner office overlooking the banking hall, adjusted her glasses. Evelyn, the branch manager, had built her career on precision and control, yet something about the scene unfolding below unsettled her. The presence of Keanu, the unspoken solidarity between strangers, it all seemed to challenge the rigid structure she had meticulously upheld. She leaned forward, her pen tapping against the desk, as if weighing an invisible scale. The boy's mother approached the counter, her voice barely audible as she explained her predicament. Marcus, emboldened by an inexplicable resolve, offered her a seat and began to assist her with a patience that surprised even himself. Claire, standing nearby, caught Evelyn's eye through the glass partition. For a fleeting moment, their gazes locked, and an unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared humanity that transcended their roles. As the banking hall hummed with renewed energy, a security guard named Raoul, who had spent years blending into the background, found himself drawn to the interaction. He adjusted his stance, his usual stoicism giving way to a quiet vigilance. The room, once defined by its sterile efficiency, now felt alive, as if the walls themselves were absorbing the warmth of human connection. Evelyn finally rose from her desk, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she descended into the hall. Her presence commanded attention, and the staff instinctively straightened. But instead of issuing orders, she approached Claire and Keanu, her expression softening. "How can we help you today?" The question hung in the air, a bridge between the old order and something entirely new. The air thickened as the bank's rhythm faltered, its mechanical precision disrupted by the ripple of unspoken truths. Claire's resolve, though steadfast, now bore the weight of a silent question: could dignity endure in a space where humanity was often collateral damage? Keanu, sensing the tremor in her stance, offered no grandiose speeches, only a steady presence, his gaze a bridge between her and a room hesitant to cross it. Behind the counter, a young teller named Marcus wrestled with his own unease. Trained to prioritize efficiency over empathy, he now found himself questioning the sterile doctrine of his profession. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, the transaction before him momentarily abandoned as he watched the quiet exchange unfold. A memory of his mother, her hands calloused from years of labor, her pride undiminished, surfaced, unbidden but insistent. Elsewhere, the bank manager, a man whose career thrived on calculated detachment, observed with growing discomfort. The presence of Keanu, a figure unbound by the institution's invisible chains, felt like a mirror reflecting his own compromises. His thoughts turned to the vault below, a fortress of wealth that seemed, in this moment, a hollow monument to misplaced priorities. As the tension mounted, a subplot emerged, a whispered conversation between two other customers, a single mother and an elderly man. Their shared frustration with the system's indifference gave way to a tentative alliance. Inspired by Claire's quiet courage and Keanu's unspoken challenge, they began to advocate for one another, their voices rising above the usual hum of transactions. The bank, once a bastion of impersonal commerce, became a crucible of transformation. Claire, emboldened by the unexpected solidarity, took a step closer to the counter. Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of every overlooked individual who had stood in her place. And as she spoke, the room seemed to hold its breath, the stakes no longer confined to her alone but expanding to encompass everyone present. The air seemed to shift as Claire, emboldened by Keanu's quiet solidarity, straightened her posture. Her fingers, once trembling, now steadied against the counter. The staff, caught between the inertia of habit and the awakening of conscience, hesitated. One teller, a young man whose disinterest had been a shield against the monotony of his work, found his voice faltering as he met Claire's gaze. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as a transaction, but as a person. Keanu, with a measured glance, stepped back, allowing Claire to reclaim the space that had been denied her. The room, once indifferent, now seemed to hold its breath. A murmur rippled through the line of waiting customers, a quiet acknowledgement of the unspoken shift. Claire's request, simple yet profound in its sincerity, was met with a newfound attentiveness. The teller, fumbling at first, softened his tone, his actions imbued with a respect that had been absent moments before. As Claire completed her business, a quiet triumph radiated from her. She turned to Keanu, her eyes glistening with gratitude, but he merely offered a small nod, his presence unassuming yet transformative. The bank, once a fortress of sterile routine, now hummed with an undercurrent of possibility. The staff, shaken from their complacency, exchanged glances that carried the weight of unspoken questions. What had they overlooked? What had they become? Keanu's departure was as unceremonious as his arrival, yet the impact lingered. Claire, clutching her purse, exited the building with a newfound confidence, her steps lighter, her spirit brighter. The staff, left in the wake of this quiet upheaval, began to reassess their roles, not as gatekeepers of finance, but as stewards of humanity. The moment, fleeting yet profound, planted seeds of change that would ripple far beyond the confines of the bank. The climax loomed on the horizon, a convergence of individual awakenings and collective reckoning. Claire, once dismissed, now carried the spark of transformation. Keanu, a catalyst of quiet revolution, had left behind more than a memory, he had ignited a movement. The sterile sanctuary of steel and glass had been irrevocably altered, its foundations shaken by the simple yet profound act of seeing, of acknowledging, of caring. The bank's air, once thick with indifference, now carried a quiet ripple of change. Claire, emboldened by Keanu's unexpected solidarity, straightened her posture, her voice steady as she addressed the teller. The staff, once dismissive, now exchanged uneasy glances, their previous apathy laid bare by the actor's silent yet profound challenge. A shift, subtle but undeniable, began to take root, a collective reckoning with their own humanity. Behind the counter, a junior teller named Marcus hesitated, his hand hovering over the keyboard. He had always prided himself on efficiency, but now, confronted by the unspoken weight of the moment, he felt a pang of something unfamiliar, shame, perhaps, or the stirrings of empathy. With a deep breath, he met Claire's gaze, offering a small but genuine smile. It was a gesture that did not go unnoticed. Elsewhere in the room, a suited man with a sharp jawline and an air of authority observed the scene with narrowed eyes. Mr. Langston, the branch manager, was a man who valued order above all else. To him, this disruption, this sudden shift in the room's dynamic, felt like a threat. His mind raced, calculating how to reassert control, yet he remained rooted to the spot, his authority momentarily eclipsed by something he couldn't quite name. Keanu's presence, meanwhile, acted as a quiet catalyst. He didn't speak further, allowing the moment to unfold naturally, yet his mere proximity to Claire seemed to amplify her courage. She completed her transaction with a dignity that defied the earlier condescension, her small purse now a symbol of quiet triumph. Around her, the bank's patrons began to stir, their own transactions infused with a newfound awareness of the humanity behind each interaction. As Claire turned to leave, she caught Keanu's eye and offered a grateful nod. He returned it with a smile, his expression a blend of encouragement and humility. Behind her, Marcus watched her go, a flicker of resolve in his eyes. For the first time, he questioned the culture of the institution he served, a seed of rebellion taking root in his heart. Unseen by most, Mr. Langston clenched his jaw, his mind already plotting how to restore the status quo. Yet even he couldn't deny the subtle shift in the air, a crack in the fortress of finance, where something far more valuable than currency had momentarily taken hold. The bank's sterile hum persisted, but now it carried a subtle tremor, an undercurrent of something unspoken yet palpable. Claire, still standing at the counter, felt the weight of eyes upon her, not with the earlier sting of dismissal, but with a curiosity mingled with unease. The staff, caught between protocol and the quiet revolution unfolding, hesitated. Their polished professionalism faltered, revealing cracks where humanity might seep through. Keanu's presence, though unassuming, was a quiet storm. His gaze lingered on the teller who had first dismissed Claire, not an accusation but an invitation, a silent plea to see beyond the surface. The teller, a man whose life had been measured in balance sheets and loan approvals, felt a flicker of something long buried. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, the transaction before him momentarily forgotten. Claire's resolve, though steadfast, wavered under the weight of the moment. She clutched her purse tighter, her knuckles pale against the worn leather. The enormity of her task, securing a small loan to keep her modest bakery afloat, pressed against her chest. It wasn't just about money, it was about validation, about proving that her dreams mattered in a world that often deemed them insignificant. In the corner of the room, a manager emerged, his sharp suit and sharper demeanor cutting through the charged atmosphere. He approached with measured steps, his eyes darting between Claire and Keanu. "Is there an issue here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Keanu turned to face him, his expression calm but unyielding. "No issue," he replied, his voice steady. "Just a reminder that every transaction here represents a person, a story. Maybe it's time we start seeing them." The words, simple yet profound, struck like a tuning fork, resonating in the silence that followed. The manager hesitated, his polished exterior cracking ever so slightly. He looked at Claire, really looked at her, and for the first time, saw more than a number on a ledger. The room seemed to hold its breath as the moment stretched, a fragile thread connecting them all, poised on the edge of transformation. The air in the bank shifted as Claire, emboldened by Keanu's quiet solidarity, stepped forward, her voice steady yet resonant. "I would like to open an account," she declared, her words cutting through the lingering indifference. The staff, once entrenched in apathy, now moved with unspoken resolve, their actions softened by the weight of newfound awareness. The transaction, once trivial, became a moment of restoration, a recognition of her humanity, her worth. Keanu's presence, though unassuming, catalyzed a transformation. The sterile fortress of finance, once a bastion of exclusion, now pulsed with the warmth of connection. Claire's courage, paired with his quiet advocacy, unveiled a truth often buried beneath routine: every individual carries value beyond measure. As the final signature graced the paper, Claire's smile returned, no longer met with dismissal but with genuine acknowledgement. The bank, once indifferent, stood as a quiet witness to the power of compassion. Keanu nodded, his work done, and exited as unceremoniously as he had entered, leaving behind a ripple of change. The staff, now reflective, exchanged glances, their previous judgments unraveling into understanding. Claire walked out, her steps lighter, her spirit affirmed. The lesson lingered, a call to action for all present, to see beyond the surface, to choose empathy over indifference, and to create spaces where dignity thrives. In that moment, the fortress of finance became more than a place of transactions. It became a testament to the transformative power of human kindness. Let this be a reminder: our smallest actions can ignite profound change. Choose compassion. Always. The events at the bank left an indelible mark, a quiet revolution sparked by a single act of kindness. Claire, once diminished by the weight of silent judgment, walked out with her dignity restored, her spirit emboldened by an unexpected ally. Keanu's unassuming intervention was not grandiose, but its impact rippled through the sterile halls, awakening dormant humanity in those who witnessed it. The staff, once shackled by routine and indifference, found themselves questioning the true value of their roles beyond transactions. For Claire, the moment was transformative, a reminder that courage paired with compassion could dismantle even the most entrenched barriers. Keanu, ever the quiet catalyst, left as unobtrusively as he arrived, his presence a fleeting but profound reminder of what it means to truly see another person. The bank, once a fortress of cold efficiency, now carried a whisper of warmth, its walls imbued with the faint echo of change. Let this be a call to action, to see, to act, to be present for others in moments that may seem small but hold the potential for immense impact. In a world often preoccupied with the transactional, let us champion the transformational. The story of Claire and Keanu reminds us that kindness is a currency without limits, and its investment yields returns far beyond measure.